that. Awesome. I'm Paige. I'm an alcoholic. There's some buttons I sometimes have to push behind the scenes, which are different than the other buttons that I used to push when I was in my active alcoholism. Different buttons. Alrighty. So where we're going to be picking up today is on page 76. And we're in the chapter Into Action. So page 76, Into Action, and we will be at the third full paragraph. Now we need more action? Oh man, this is a real action-heavy chapter. Like, it's really asking me to do a thing or two. Like, oh goodness. And I was kind of hoping there'd be like an resting on my laurels. To be fair, we did get the quiet hour, so that's as close to a nap as we're gonna get. Alrighty. So now we need more action, without which we find that faith without works is dead. And that is a theme that we see all throughout this book. And we've seen it again and again and again. And that idea of faith without works is dead. What that means is that belief in the power of God, higher power, creator, and the spirit of the universe, belief in the power of the 12 steps, belief in Alcoholics Anonymous, belief in our sponsors, belief without action, without the actions of the 12 steps, and I will drink again. That's what that means. Because I'm somebody, I hear faith without works is dead. It sounds a little religious. It sounds like maybe I then won't have faith. No. What we're talking about with this idea of faith without works is dead is the idea that my ideas, my beliefs, my opinions cannot and will not keep me sober. What keeps me sober is the course of action that is outlined in this book. Annoyingly, a whole lot of the action is in the chapter Into Action, which I will say is a convenient place to tuck it away. But I take that action, and what I have is an experience. And that experience is a spiritual awakening, a spiritual experience, and that is what I need to stay sober. So I can't stay sober on ideas. Annoyingly, I can't stay sober on opinions because I came with a whole bunch of those, or my judgments of all the people doing it wrong. Can't stay sober on that. But what allows me to stay sober is a course of action that brings about an experience of God. And that is what I'm after. So it says, let's look at steps 8 and 9. And welcome those who just joined us. We're on page 76. So let's look at steps 8 and 9. And I want to share with you guys a little bit of a story that kind of helps explain this part of the book, or at least help me to see this part of the book in a brand new way. And this was sort of like maybe 2021, kind of like Zoom. Zoom's like big, everyone's on Zoom, but we're kind of used to it. I'm not good at time orientation. I don't know where it was. I do know where it was. It was on Zoom. Sober, I know where I am. And I had a friend of mine, and she was, just getting sober, and she was going to chair the meeting for the very first time, this meeting. It wasn't one I normally went to, but she's going to chair it, her first time taking a commitment like that, and she's like, Paige, can you come? And I absolutely can. One of my favorite things to do is to go and cheerlead. It's my favorite. I just love to do that. I don't get to do it as often as I used to because I'm so busy, but I will be there. I'm going to be like, yeah, you're chairing, you're doing great. So I show up. And the meeting is on step 8. And she asked me, Paige, could you do a reading on step 8? And I'm like, absolutely. Now, I'm a big book gal. The big book, it's my jam. I love it. So what do? I pick up the book and I read this paragraph that we're on. Welcome to those that just joined. The paragraph that we're on is page 76, third paragraph. That was a natural segue, and I rarely have those. Normally my segues are not natural. So 76, third paragraph. And I read that paragraph, and I read the next one following to give a little bit more. And then there was a gentleman, and no meeting is anyone's meeting, but and it's kind of like it's his meeting. He's the big guy. It's his meeting. And he goes to share. He's the first one. He hops in right away to share. And what he says is, he said, there's F all. Now he said the actual bad word, but I'm watching my language. Sorry, I shouldn't throw him under the bus like that. But he said, there's F all about step 8 in the big book. And if you want to read about step 8, you do the 12 and 12. And like the spiritual giant that I am, ooh, I got a resentment. Ooh, I was like, oh, that guy. And so thankfully it was an evening meeting. And what I did was I took it through the columns in my evening review. And if you're wondering, like, hey, what did some of that fourth column stuff look like? Because I'll tell you. Well, listen, I have this sense of needing a sense of value and worth from things outside of myself. And so I can get my sense of value and worth from what I think people think of me, from being liked, but also from being right. Everyone's seeing my need to be right, my value and worth from being Little Miss AA, Little Miss Big Book, Little Miss Big Book Knowledge, Little Miss 12-Step. And he threatened all that. And if I'm not seeking my sense of value and worth, in that way, I'm not getting hurt. So I took some inventory of that, and I could see some of that was going on. And then maybe I should have done a little bit more work, because my next course of action was to have a look at the book and find where step 8 is and prove them wrong. Again, spiritual giant over here, and what that did was that led me to have this experience where in this later part of the chapter, what we don't have is what we often hear about in the rooms, which is we do step 8 and we worry about step 8, and then we have step 9 and we do step 9. What we're going to see is an interplay with step 8 and step 9 together. And there's going to be some prayers, and there's going to be some directions that are pre-amends directions, which point to step 8. And then what we're going to do is we're going to see, step 9, and they're going to be intertwined. So the takeaway is sometimes it's really helpful to have a resentment. You get a whole new perspective in a whole number of ways. And by the way, that gentleman, he is a lovely guy. He does a lot of good. I just think it's a great story. So it says, let's look at steps 8 and 9. We have a list of all persons we have harmed and to whom we are willing to make amends. Wait a minute. When did I already get that list? When did that happen? We made it when we took inventory. Oh, man. And I'll share something with you guys. Most of the people, maybe not all, but almost all, the people or the institutions from our resentments list, we take that course of action, the columns, and that spiritual jujitsu, it flips on our head like that person I can't stand, and it's like, man, I owe him an amends. Lame, oh, not cool. We get that switch. And so there's people there that I get from my 8-step list. Obviously, when I look at my sex harms, it makes sense. My romantic relationships, I've caused harms. There is going to be people from that list as well. And also, what I found is when I use in the fourth column of resentment, the first prompt that I like to pull from is, have we done these things? And it comes from the top of 65, where it's that, though we didn't like their symptoms and the way these disturbed us, they, like ourselves, were sick too. Top of 67, not 65. Sorry. I was trying to do things from memory, and that is not great because I have done a lot of drinking and outside goods, and sometimes the thoughts don't connect. Anywho, I know you guys can't relate to that, just me over here. But that idea, though I didn't like their symptoms and the way these disturbed us, they, like ourselves, were sick too. And there's a lot of times where I take a look at the second column and what they did to me, and I have a look, wait a minute, I did that to somebody else. And that's another place where I can get names to help populate my 8-step list. And I will also say we don't need to be rigid and black and white. Let's say there's a person that we have on our heart that we know we owe an amends to. And maybe we didn't have any resentment towards them. Maybe we didn't have any fear or there was any relationship conduct. Guess what we can do? We can put it on our 8-step list. That's okay. That is okay. And so step 8, what it is about, it is about the list, and it is about becoming willing. So it says we made it when we took inventory. We subjected ourselves to a drastic self-appraisal. You want to know how we can tell if I've been thorough in my 4th step and thorough in my 5th step? It's when I feel like, ooh, that was pretty drastic, Ooh, I had to really have a look at some things. That's how I know. A drastic self-appraisal. That self-appraisal is where I'm looking at me and what I did. And so I'll just share it with you. This is, where is it? There it is. Hold on, I'll put me in the corner. This is, and I've got other stuff in front of it, and so I can't see, but y'all can see. There it is. There we go. This is just a helpful way of formatting an 8-step list. If you don't want to format it in this way, don't do it. Don't do it. These directions aren't in the book. By the way, I'm going to share with you some 8-step stuff that I do that's not in the book. So feel free to completely disregard this. But one of the things that can be really helpful is to write down that list, to take them from my inventory, to see who is on my heart. And again, if I'm wondering who should be on my 8-step list, I will give you a hint and a tip that you are absolutely going to find annoying. And that is, if that person comes to mind, or you go to a meeting and they're talking about steps 8 and 9, and you think of them and you get what I like to call the twisties and the resisties, that's how I know. You know what I mean? I know in my heart, I know in my gut who needs to be on there, what needs to be on there. And it's like if I'm wrestling with it, it's probably good to put it on. Now, what I find really helpful to do is to then put these names into columns of willingness. And it is really only looking at my willingness, not about availability, not about if I have enough money to make the financial amends, but my level of willingness. And it can be helpful to just, if there are amends that I would be willing to make right now, like they showed up, here they are, I can't wait to see them, I can't wait to do it. I put their names in the right now column. And then if there are some names that I might be, maybe later, I'd like to get a few under my belt first, I'd like to get some practice, or some of them, I put them in the later. Then there's the maybe, I'm feeling a little iffy about it. The effie comes from the next one, which is the F no, over my dead body. Absolutely not. Have you lost your mind, Paige? That's the never column. And it can just be helpful to put these names in the columns of willingness. Now, there's 2 ways that we can attack the list. The first is kind of the most simple, which is if I'm willing to do them right now, let's go. Let's go and make those amends right now. And what happens is it helps build that momentum. I make those amends and those laters seem to be a little easier. And the nevers begin to slide over and so on and so forth. But it also gives me some actions that I can do for some of the ones that are in the big scary columns. So for my nevers, I can begin the practice of praying for the willingness. Spoilers, we're going to talk about that here in a bit. I can begin to pray for the willingness. I can also begin to write out my amends. I really like to write them out ahead of time. It doesn't have to be a perfect script, but it's just, I think we all know what it's like to go and make an amends, or even if we don't and we've never made an amends in our life, we have our projections, which are always bigger and scarier than they really are. And it's helpful to have something, And so that is what is often a normal way to approach the 8-step list. Now, some of y'all know I always do things the normal way. So I do not force anyone to do this. And as I talk about some of the stuff that I do in step 8, man, I love talking about step 8. I, as a sponsor, have a whole lot of fun in step 8. We can ask my sponsees whether or not they have fun. That's subjective. But one of the things that I've done with sponsees is if they start with their nevers, what happens is that's like diving into the deep end. That's the ripping off the Band-Aid. And if that is the thing that we are so scared to do, and we go do it, man, that momentum builds itself. And so I've had a couple sponsees, I've had a grand sponsee who have started with their nevers. And they started with I am never going to make amends to that person again. And I want you to know you don't have to do this, but it is powerful when it happens. Also, because I am not financially responsible, which I'm sure is a shock, I purchase a custom patch for them that says amends badass. And I do, and I ship it to them, and it's for them. And so if you are like a little unsure, amends badass, you can get that patch. And one of the things that I'm so big on in terms of spiritual actions in general is momentum. Because a lot of times that, like, when we talk about these steps we're afraid to do, the human response is to procrastinate. The normal response is to try to find the path of least resistance, which often involves dodging our sponsor. Like, oh, I'm not around, you can't find me, that amends, But if I take action regardless of how I feel, that is a way that will build that momentum. And so I'll stop the share for now. One of the things that I do with my sponsees is I tell them, now you can be a little more gentle than I am, or I've been lately, but there's times where it's like they don't even have the list fully written. And if you disagree with this, you are right. You go ahead. You go do it. And judge me, please do. Somebody's got to. I am taking my inventory, but somebody's got to be judging me. But one of the things that I do is I say pick 10. You don't have to tell them to pick 10. That might seem extreme. I know, I saw some of the faces like, what? Pick 10. And what we do is we send 10 approaches, like not to one person, that's stalking and that's a boundary issue, but we send an approach to 10 people that we know is on their amends list, that we, from doing the deal, we know. And so I say pick 10. And what that does is that gets the amends process moving. And it gets us right in the middle of the deep end. And if they pick the easy 10, beauty. But it gets us doing it. And also, I just want you guys to know, I am not, I probably seem like this monster. It's like this amends monster. But I sit with my sponsees and I handhold. Yes, they're going in the deep end, but I got their hand. We're handholding this. So I sit with them and I will write out their amends with them. I will help them figure out what we're going to say. I help them figure out the approaches. And I can't tell you how often that process helps with the willingness, because there is so many times it's like I don't even know what I'm gonna say, and often it's a voice to text is how I do it, because I say the things and people will be like, that's amazing, what was that? And I'm like, I don't remember. And the first time's always better than the second time. So I learned when helping with amends, I do voice to text, and I voice to text suggestions of what they could say for the approach, or if we're trying to figure out how to make the amends, I voice to text what we could say for the amends, and just so they can, write it out and have it as a script. But the benefit of picking 10, and those of you, and keep in mind if you're like, that's extreme, I'll say pick 3 or pick 5, but the benefit of picking 10 is we're right in the middle and we get experience. Also, it's 2025. Do you really think people are going to get back to you right away? Like, our biggest fear is that everybody will be like, yes, I will receive your amends right now, in this moment. And you'll have like 24 people that are like, amend me, and listen, that's not how that goes. I promise you, at least 5 of those, you're going to be having to send some follow-up text. Hey, I just wanted to check back in. Are you open to receiving? Can we book a time for an amends? But it gets us in there. And again, I do things a little countercultural to how some things go in AA, because I am a chaos gremlin, but also because it works. Because whatever I do builds momentum. Whether it is making amends, I build momentum and the amends get easier, the process gets easier, or I'm building momentum with fear and complacency, and it becomes easier to avoid. And actually, when we're staring down it feels like staring down the barrel pre-amends. Oh man, if you are feeling like I'm a little backed up, I've got, I got to get stuff flowing, you can drink the AA meeting coffee. That'll get it going, but also go make an amends. Like, that'll get things moving. It's like a probiotic. It'll get you going. Don't listen to me for medical advice. I just also really should put that disclaimer. Do not. But It really is. Like, the more that I do, the easier it is. And it just, the freedom that comes from it. And when we're staring down the barrel of an amends, that's what it feels like before I'm going to do it. Like, I'm so afraid. But what I get is a little window. I'm talking about windows in two form. A little window into the window of willingness. So when we are working with somebody that's new, when they put down the drink, or maybe they haven't even put down the drink, but they're open to getting sober, going to detox or something like that, there's a little window that opens up. And it's just like the window that opens up when I'm sitting in an AA meeting like this one, and some jerk like me is talking about 8 and 9, and we got the twisty and the resisty, and we're building up a little bit of courage, and that window opens up where maybe I will make that amends. And I know that you guys would never have any experience with avoiding an amends, but we know what happens if I avoid. That window will close, and I won't do it. And it's that same thing with newcomers or people coming back to Alcoholics Anonymous. There's a window where we're willing to take action where we weren't previously willing. And if I don't follow that up, that window will close and I will drink again. So it's really, so I'm really big on like, let's go, like all in, woo! And again, I'll talk about some of the stuff that I do for the step 8. To build willingness, and some of it, again, feel free to fully disregard because it is not in the book. But it is things that I do, and it's effective. And just again, I only ever do it with consent. Actually, now that I'm talking about it, one of the things that I've done when working with sponsees, and again, it's only if they've ever consented to this, but we've played amends roulette. I don't do it with any sponsees that also have a problem with gambling, cognizant of that. And so what I do is I put their 8-step list on a virtual roulette wheel, and like we, spin the wheel, and it's like, who's next? And it is cool what happens. And I was doing that with a sponsee, and she was like, oh, I'm feeling a little nervous. And I started asking her about it, and I was like, who's the one, like, what's the fear? And she's like, it's this one amends that I do not want to do. And just asking her about it, I saw that little window open up. Spoilers, she got this amends badass patch. I saw this little window open up. And I was like, do we want to just send that approach now? And, we were, it's like going on an amender to prevent a mentee B, a mental breakdown, because she's fun and hip and called it that. And it's like, do you want to, if we're going to have a mentee B anyways, why don't we just make an amends, And she reached out and, the response she got at first, it was like, I'm so happy to hear from you. And in the amends, she shared this thing that, it carried so much guilt and so much weight. And it's this, I'm such a monster for having done this. And she said, I did this. And the person said, I don't even care about that. I don't even care about that. Like, that is the freedom. That thing that was eating us alive, man, it falls away. Like, that's what happens. So amends roulette is one of the things that I do. One of the other things that I do is if you're familiar with Dr. Bob. Dr. Bob is Alcoholics Anonymous co-founder, and when Bill Wilson carried the message, he had been around the Oxford groups, and Bill Wilson, he's like, oh my gosh, this is the first person that knows what it's like to be an alcoholic from actual lived experience. And he's like, I am willing to do absolutely anything necessary to recover. Not amends, but anything else, and I'm sure nobody relates to that. And he goes out to Atlantic City and goes on a bender, and he goes on a rip-roaring bender, and it is bad. And he comes back, and he's given a bottle of beer and like 2 goofballs, because he's got to perform surgery. He's a colorectal surgeon. You kind of want those guys to be sober, and we don't know how it turned out with the patient. I will say though, it probably was fine, because the history nerds, who I love, the history husband, they would have filed a lawsuit. I know they would have. So it would have been fine. But then he goes to do surgery and he doesn't come back for hours and hours and hours, and it's the wee hours or the late hours of the night he comes back, and what had he done? He had gone on an amender. So to follow up his bender, he went on an amender. And so from that, that's what I do with guys. And like, by guys, I mean the people that I work with, where it's like, let's fricking go. Let's go on this amender. But sometimes I use their defects of character against them, which is to say, if I have sponsees that are particularly competitive, I put them in what I like to call an amender, where it's like I make like a poster for them, like it's a UFC fight. They have little fight names, and it'll be like a race to 5 amends or a race to 10 amends. And we got involved. Like we even had teams. We had Team Canada versus Team USA. I won't let you know how it went. It didn't go well. I was trying to issue spiritual green cards so we could get more people on Team USA to even up the scores. And then we played with just different teams, and it's one of those things, like I'll use anything to help build that willingness. Because what are we most afraid of? So often it's step 9. Because I'm so afraid I'm going to make this amends and I'm going to be rejected. Because what is our 2 great fears? Rejection and abandonment, right? And so anything we can do to get that. So all of that to say, I will recklessly spend my money. If you would like to start with your never amends, I will get you an amends badass patch. I absolutely will. The other thing is, if you're feeling a little competitive, we can put you in an amender. It'll be a good time. We can do teams. It'll be great. And so that's what I do. You don't have to do any of that. So going back to the reading, 76, it says, we subjected ourselves to a drastic self-appraisal. Now we go out to our fellows and repair the damage done in the past. So what is asked? I've got to go out. And I will say, beyond a shadow of a doubt, God will put people in our path that we need to make amends to. Like that absolutely will happen. It does happen. But I've got to try to find them. Also, God turned in defects for good. I'm pretty good at finding people online. So if you're like, hey, you know what? Yeah, I know. It's the worst. You had a 3rd grade teacher in the 70s. I got her number. Found her. It's a thing. Power for good, not for evil. But if you need help, I will help you. So we go out, we've got to find them and seek them and reach out to them. And it says, and repair the damage done in the past. Now that is a definition of what an amend is, to repair the damage done in the past. I have a 1930s dictionary, and in my 1930s dictionary, it's not the unofficial one, but it's just one I have in the house because I'm fun at parties. Come on over, we'll do an amender. Have an amender and chips, it'll be great. I'm not invited out. Okay. So in my 1930s dictionary, the word amend means to free from fault, to improve, to correct. So what are we doing? We are righting our wrongs. We are repairing the damage done. We are freeing ourselves from the other person from the faults and the harms that we caused. That's what we get to do. Because I don't know about you, step 9 comes up as a topic at a meeting. And so many of us are like, I can't make an amends. Because I've said sorry so many times. And an amend is not an apology. It's not the end of the world if a sorry comes out during the amends process. It's not, especially for the Canadians, the stereotype that we're going to say it a whole lot. Sorry. But our geese are the only ones that don't say it. Sorry. They hiss. But it's not the end of the world. But the amends process itself is not an apology. It might happen in the amends, and it might need to happen in the amends, but the amends is deeper. What we are trying to do in the amends is to repair, to make right, to restore. And we can do that right away. So, Actually, while it's on my brain, just because immediately it's like, oh, but I've continued to relapse. I gotta demonstrate that I've been sober a while. I hear that. But I'm just going to offer some language that we can use in making those types of approaches for the amends. We can acknowledge, hey, I know that I have relapsed for years, and I know that I have betrayed your trust again and again and again. And I'm hoping that you would be open to receiving an amends from me. And I know that you might not be open, and that's okay. But my hope is that in making this amends, I'm going to be able to go from there to demonstrate the change and demonstrate the consistency in this new way of life. So we can acknowledge it. Because so often we're like, I can't do it. It's like, we could just communicate the thing. You know when it talks about like we intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us? Basic communication skills, baffling for somebody like me. I could just say the thing and acknowledge the thing and then see how they feel and if they're open. Consent. Wild. Anywho. So we go out and we're trying to repair. So it says we're doing our best. We attempt to sweep away the debris which has accumulated out of our effort to live on self-will and run the show ourselves. What is interesting about that is it doesn't say the debris from my drinking. It says the debris, the damage, the pain and the harms that I caused from me living on self-will and trying to play God. Now, of course, my living on self-will and trying to play God, that gets me drunk. But we're not just looking at the things that we did when we're drinking. And some of y'all know when you've been sober a while, especially when you've been sober like a while, you got sponsees and then you got to make an amends. And it's like, especially to somebody in AA, it's just, you can't even be like, I was in my active alcoholism. I'm a different person. I did it yesterday. That's my bad. By the way, my bad is not how we make an amends. Just going to throw that out there. Absolutely. So I was asked if I could give the definition of amend again. So from my 1930s dictionary, it says to free from fault. To free from fault. And then it's got a semicolon. It says improve or correct. And so when we look at the word amends, what we're really trying to do, this is the slowest months ago, Vivian was like, hey, could you talk slower? And I made a concerted effort to try to talk slower, and I forgot about that. Completely forgot about it. This is the slowest I've talked in a while. I can feel it. So a normal speed. What we are looking at with amends is to make right, to repair, to restore, to change. That's what we're talking about. And, when a piece of legislation is changed, I'm members of Parliament, I'm Canadian, they don't go around and say sorry to each other in the House of Commons, despite the stereotype of being Canadian. What they do is they change the legislation. So it's about changing, repairing, restoring. So hopefully that was helpful. And hopefully I went slow enough. It's okay if I didn't, because I don't realize how quickly I talk. Until it's kind of like alcoholism. I don't realize how bad it is until I slow down. It's like, alcoholism, or even self-will. It's like you're driving the car like 100 miles an hour. Did the American system 100 miles an hour, and I'm throwing all the stuff in the back seat, and then I get sober, slam on the brakes, and it all comes flying forward. It's like that, but with how quickly I talk, So it says, so we're cleaning up the debris which is accumulated based on self-will. It says if we haven't the will to do this, so if I am not willing to make these amends, we ask until it comes. And any time in this book we see the words we ask, that is a prayer. So if I am struggling with the willingness to make amends, what I can do is I can take that to prayer and ask for the willingness. And I can do that with any spiritual action, or really any action. Right? I just, it was yesterday I filed my taxes. I had to pray for some willingness. I'm just not a paperwork person is what it is. It wasn't dramatic. You know what I mean? I had to pray for if I pray for the willingness, I'm already there. But if I'm not even willing to pray for the willingness, I'm in trouble. Right? So one of the things that I can do to help build my willingness. Oh, sorry. We are on page 76, and we are third full paragraph. We didn't go far. We didn't go quick. We go. It's surprising we don't go that quickly based on how quickly I speak. It's shock those two don't line up. But if we haven't the will to do this, we ask until it comes. So the ways in which we have so far to build willingness. Well, the first way that I can build willingness is I can write out the list, and I can reach out, or I can start with the ones I'm willing to do. We can also pray for the willingness. One of the other things is I can write out my amends, and often once I know what I'm going to say and I'm clear on that, man, that helps with the willingness. Now, there's the direction of picking 10. Is indirectly referenced on the next page, which, based on how I'm doing for time, we're not going to get there. So the other way is to just reach out and do it. How do I build willingness? Just do it. Just go do it. Let's go do it. Let's reach out. And I throw myself into it. So those are some suggestions. The other suggestions are amends roulette, going on a mender, those ones too. But it says, remember, it was agreed at the beginning we would go to any lengths for victory over alcohol. And I'm going to point something out. This is another example of the book meeting us where we're at, meeting us in our most natural, most human resistance, and taking us where we need to go. And if you're like, wait a minute, when did I agree to that? Page 58. Technically, page 58, if we're going through the book chronologically, in the chapter How It Works, it asks, if you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. Oh man, I agreed to this in step 3. No, because again, the third step is a decision. To work these 12 steps is a way of life, like my life depends on it, because it does. It is a callback. Any action that I take in the 12 steps is a callback to the power of that decision. But that decision has no power by itself. It only has power based on the actions that I take. So, darn. I agreed I'd go to any lengths. Who knew that was going to be held against me? Right? By the way, I always tell my sponsees, this is going to come back and bite you. Here it is. It's biting. It's got some teeth. All right. Probably there are still some misgivings. Again, the book not expecting me to be Captain Willingness of the Willingness Brigade. It's expecting me to be afraid and unwilling and resisty and twisty and not open to it. So probably there are still some misgivings. As we look over the list of business acquaintances and friends we have hurt, we may feel diffident about going to some of them on a spiritual basis. So we might feel a little unsure about showing up to them based on this concept of the new spiritual way of life and talking about spirituality. It says, let us be reassured. To some people, we need not and probably should not emphasize the spiritual feature on the first approach. Now, for me, that first approach is the approach. What I do is I reach out to people to see if they would be open to scheduling a time for an amends, or if they'd be open to receiving an amends. And it can sound something like, I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and in the process of recovery, I am asked to reflect upon my life, and in so doing, it became apparent to me that I caused you harm. I would like to have the opportunity, if you would allow me, to sit down and to make an amends to you, whatever way that you would be most open to, and so that's the approach. Now, what if I don't want to tell them I'm in AA? Okay, that's not a hill I die on, but it is incredible how often a 9th step turns into a 12th step. You guys know what I'm saying? You show up for an amends and God just leads us to somebody that we can help. It is incredible what happens. But maybe it's a work thing and maybe it's not appropriate, and that's okay. But you could just say, I was reflecting on my life and my past actions, and I believe that how I've treated you and how I've spoken to you has caused you harm, and I would like to have a conversation where I attempt to make it right. Something like that. So that's, for me, is that first approach. And so we're living the spiritual way of life, and it's sort of that like, hey, you don't have to be like, I am spiritual now, accept my amends, which, to be fair, most people aren't doing. So it says we might prejudice them. Again, prejudice is to have an old idea about something we have not experienced. And one of the things that I do in the approach messages is I'm super transparent. I'm explaining what it is, because for us, it's like the language is old hat, which is old hat for, we know what this language means, but most people aren't using the word amends casually, So I explain what I'm doing. I also explain, like, let's say I'm reaching out to a former partner, and I reach out to a partner and they're in a relationship. Rather than being like, they're in a relationship, I just, bear with me, I communicate. I say, hey, I'm reaching out to you today because I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and part of the program asks that I reflect upon my life, and it became so evident the harms that I caused you. I would like to, if you would allow me the opportunity to make it right. I also want to be clear that my intention is not to reopen any relationship. And I understand that you are in a relationship, and I want to make sure that I am fully respectful of that. You see how we can communicate? Isn't that wild? It's wild. And then they can tell you, no, thank you. Or yes, I'm open, and we've, there's no weirdness. I can just communicate. I can't tell you how life-changing that was and how absolutely not intuitive it is for somebody like me. So it says, at the moment, we are trying to put our lives in order. So we don't want to prejudice them. So again, I try to explain as clearly what I'm trying to do, the amends process, and like any of those sorts of hey, if you're not open, that's okay. If you're if it wouldn't be healthy for your relationship, I don't quite phrase it like that, but you guys get what I'm saying. I communicate. And at the moment, we're trying to put our lives in order, but that is not an end in itself. So this process is going to put our lives in order, but that's not really why we're doing it. And this is an important line. It says our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. So the real purpose of what we are doing here is to fit ourselves to God and the people about us. And I can't tell you how many times I've worked with sponsees, and they've said, okay, I'm willing to make amends because I know it's not about me, it's about the other person. And then a different sponsee will say, I'm willing to make amends because I know it's not about the other person. It's not about me. And I want you to know, in neither case do I correct them because they're willing. And I'm not gonna go do. My motives don't matter as much as my actions. Go do. But the purpose of amends is to fit myself to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. And that was the decision I made in step 3. And that's what I was asking to be freed of those defects of character for in step 7. And that is the beautiful purpose that I get to be of use, and not just a little bit. No, maximum service to God and the people about us. That is incredible. But I can't do that if I'm hiding behind mailboxes. And to be fair, I don't think there's many mailboxes around anymore. But you know what I mean? You know that feeling when you're in the grocery store and you see somebody and you're like, different aisle, I can't be of maximum service when I'm like, don't see me, And if, by the way, if you're wondering, do I owe an amends? If I'm doing the different aisle, that's an indication, So that is our purpose, and that is why we make amends. Because we are growing in the spiritual awakening. We are growing in the ability to be used. used by this power. So it says, it is seldom wise, so not a good idea, to approach an individual who still smarts from our injustice to him, that is to say, who still is hurt by our harming them, and announce that we have gone religious. So it's that idea of like to not show up being like, I am so spiritual now, and look how great I am now that I am sober. It says in the prize ring, that would be called leading with the chin. So as you can tell, I'm very tough and strong, and clearly would do well in a fight. But it's a boxing reference. And so it's that idea to lead with the chin is to like, imagine if you're in a fight. And what's the advice if you're in a fight is, keep boxing matches, keep your gloves up, right? Because I want to protect the face. Because like, I don't even know, but I have a feeling, it's down I go, right? Leading with the chin is like, look how spiritual I am. Look, I'm so spiritual and so punchable right in this region. That's what we're talking about. And to be like, I am sober and spiritual now. Like, that's not the approach. So why lay ourselves open to being branded fanatics or religious bores? We may kill a future opportunity to carry a beneficial message. So if I'm showing up in that way, I'm going to possibly destroy this opportunity to be helpful. And like I said, it is incredible how often a 12th step comes out of the 9th step. And it says, but our man is sure to be impressed with a sincere desire to set right the wrong. Again, another definition in the text of what an amends is. And because it's there, I can read it quickly. I'm just kidding. A sincere desire to set right the wrong. The amends is to set right, to make right the wrong. He is going to be more interested in a demonstration of goodwill than in our talk of spiritual discoveries. I need to demonstrate this program, and I demonstrate this through the amends process. Again, most people do not care about like, I am now this length. Well, actually, most people are pretty generous with us, to be honest with you, when we're like, I'm this much sober, and I did my 5th step, and I'm now in a sober living or whatever, and to be fair for us, like, it's like we won an Oscar, and we treat it like, because it's a big freaking deal. Yeah, you did your 5th step. Amazing. But like, they don't care. And what am I there to do? Not like, look at me, I am a spiritual giant. It is, I caused you harm, and I would like the opportunity to make it right. And that demonstrates. So it goes on to say we don't use this as an excuse for shying away from the subject of God. So it's, again, I know this is a shocker, but as alcoholics, I know, bear with me, we tend to have all or nothing, black and white thinking. What? Us? Crazy. Who would have thought that? But we're seeing that like, hey, that doesn't mean don't ever like not mention God or spirituality or what you're trying to do. That's not what we're saying. It says when it will serve any good purpose, we are willing to announce our convictions with tact and common sense. Which neither one of those are, readily abundant when I first got sober, or readily abundant when I'm off, when I'm off the beam. Where's my tact? The common sense, it's missing, probably with my marbles that I lost. So the question of how to approach the man we hated will arise. So again, we're talking at this point of how do I make the approach? How do I build willingness? How do I approach the person that I hated? And this is the book meeting us where we're at, not expecting us to be like, oh boy, I can't wait to make amends to that big stinky jerk. It's saying like, yeah, okay, how do I make amends to the person that I hate? It may be, because this is the argument, that person has done me more harm than I've done to him. Well, it may be that he has done us more harm than we have done him. And though we may have acquired a better attitude toward him, I did that through step 4, I did that through step 5, we are still not too keen about admitting our faults. So this is another way in which we can build willingness. And this is what I talk about when I say pick 10. It is nevertheless, so meeting us where we're at with compassion, not expecting us to be perfect or have a perfect understanding or perfect willingness, but it's going to take us where we need to go. Nevertheless, with a person we dislike, we take the bit in our teeth. Now, there's 2 ways to look at that bit in our teeth. The first is like, just kind of grin and bear it. Like, just bite down, don't say the thing, and go make the approach for the amends. That's the first way. But if anyone's familiar with horses, the bit is, Pete, well, now we're on 77, but thank you so much, Charlotte. Unless there was a first question and I missed it, because somebody, it's me, doesn't always focus. Also me. But so the horses. So the bit is the part of the bridle, which is the what goes around the horse's head, that goes in the horse's mouth. So that's what the bit is. And the bit is how you direct a horse. So when we talk about putting the bit in our teeth, it's this idea of I am then being led by God and led by this process. So that's a more powerful way to look at it. But let's be honest, when we have to make amends to somebody we don't like, it is actually, this is more of a 10-step story, but it's come into my mind, it's come into my heart. And basically what we're learning is I'm not a spiritual giant. So there was a situation at my home group where there's this person and he had been like talking a lot of not nice things about me. And I thought I overheard him talking about me. And in a bit of spiritual, just on the beam, I'm like, what the F did you say about me? And I said the bad word. So I can't judge the other guy for saying the bad word. And I yelled at him. And then we started getting into a bit of a yelling thing. And if you know me, you know I'm not a yeller. I'm not a what the F sort of person. I'm a like, that's okay sort of vibe. After that I leave and I have 2 thoughts, and these are my 2 thoughts, and this is the order. I should just kill myself and then never go back to my home group again. I'm going to point out that is the order, and so in that moment, I had that opportunity and I took the bit in my teeth and I made an amends. There were 2 other gentlemen that were there. It was so funny when I was like, are you talking about me? The one guy was like absolutely confused, but the other guy's face was like, absolutely. So that was an interesting, don't try to read the room. Don't try to mind read. Not my business. That's me. Nope. But I called them up, made an amends, and I called this person up. And this is somebody who would never answer my phone calls. And I'm like, this mother effer better answer my calls. Again, spiritual giant over here. And I call him up. And it's interesting because he had done me considerable harm. And he had done some other stuff before talking about me. He'd been quite verbally abusive towards me. Guess what I just did? I yelled at him, so not better. But, and so when I call him up, I said, listen, we're not going to talk about the other stuff. But I need to talk about my behavior today. And my behavior today was not okay. It was not okay for me to yell at you. It was not okay to speak to you in the way that I did. And I got to clean that up. And I'm alive. And after this, I have to go to my home group, so ta-da! But that's the thing. It's like, it's easier to just go and do it than to put it off. And the more I put it off, the worse. Man, it eats me alive. So it says, it is harder to go to an enemy than to a friend, but we find it much more beneficial. Man, the power of God works in me taking actions I don't want to take and doing things that I don't want to do. We go to him in a helpful and forgiving spirit, confessing our former ill feeling and expressing our regret. And next week, when we kind of continue on page 77, I'll talk about how I go through the process of formally making an amends. But I think with, nope, we're out of time. We'll leave it there and it'll be over to Vivian. We'll pick it up there next week. So thank you.